Hello, Alexander.
Hello, nice to be in your show.
Lovely to have you here. Guten Abend. Wie geht's denn? Servus, I should say, which is, I believe, the Austrian way of saying hello. Alexander, yes. Can you confirm that the actual COVID vaccine will be mandated by law in February?
That's what the government published today. They gave a speech and said that from the 1st of February, every Austrian has to be vaccinated, yes.
All right. Now, first of all, how has the media reacted? What is the sort of national public opinion in Austria, would you say?
It's very difficult to sum this up a little bit because we have such a broad variety of different media that obviously lots of the media are very much in favor of it, but there is a very big amount of, let's say, smaller media which is very much opposed to this new rule. Just to give you a little insight, since the beginning of the corona crisis, all the main media stations in Austria get additional funding by the state to publish the new corona rules and to also promote them. So obviously it's a little bit difficult to talk about media right now.
Well, that sounds very similar here in the UK, Alexander. What's your reaction to this news about the vaccine being a mandate?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that in Austria we have more than 2 million people not vaccinated. It's one of the lowest vaccination rates in Central Europe, and actually I'm very proud about this. It's interesting to see how everything developed. At the beginning they said, well, it's only a few weeks of wearing masks and lockdown, and then everything is over. And then they told us, well, it's only a second lockdown. Well, it's only a third lockdown. Well, you only have to keep distance. Last winter, they told us, now we're going to implement the vaccination. Everyone can do it for free and completely, it's completely free choice to do it. And this summer, we already knew this is definitely not the case, as they pushed and pushed and pushed. And when we saw them introducing the rule that you, as an unvaccinated person, can't enter a restaurant anymore, we knew exactly what we are heading for. And now we have it. We have a lockdown for the unvaccinated. Now we have a lockdown for everyone from Monday, but it will last only for 20 days. After the 20 days, it will continue to be a lockdown only for the unvaccinated again. And from the 1st of February, we are forced to take the shot.
Well, I think it's shocking news. I understand that you mentioned 2 million Austrians are unvaccinated. So adults vaccinated, we're looking at something like 60% of the population vaccinated, right? As opposed to over 85% here in the UK. Why the vaccine hesitancy? Why have so many people decided not to be vaccinated, would you say?
First of all, the Austrians are very freedom-loving people. Even though they publicly do not like to protest so much, if you talk to them personally, lots of them do not really like being forced to do something. So it's actually a very natural and very Austrian response to this whole thing. Second of all, following different news and different media, we found out that certain countries, even though having a high vaccination rate, still have a very high incidence and a very high number of people catching corona. And we saw at the same time that countries which did not try to push or to force us into doing anything actually had a way lower number. Let's, for example, compare Sweden with an incidence of 50 to, let's say, Ireland with a vaccination rate of about, I think, 90% of the adult people and an incidence similar to the Austrian incidence. So you see that vaccination or no vaccination did not really make the difference, but rather how you approach the virus itself. Do you approach it as something which you talk about normally, which you react normally to, or do you approach it as something extraordinary and something they all told us at the beginning, that it's a pandemic and so on? I know that all my Austrian friends at the beginning all took this whole pandemic very serious. They said, well, let's see, let's follow the rules of the government. But after a few months, the first huge contradictions were already visible. For example, when our government told us that the masks do not really work. And a few weeks later, they told us we have to wear masks. And then a few weeks later, we heard that there's now a huge deal within Austria that a certain Austrian company gets to distribute FFP2 masks and therefore earns a little bit of money with it. And a few weeks later, we had to obligatory wear the FFP2 masks. So we saw that this does not really have anything to do with the corona measures and with the corona as with the politics reacting to Corona, but rather with the politicians using this unique situation to implement new rules onto Austria, like digital rules, certain new inventions which came in, which the Austrians are normally very much opposed to. For example, that cash is limited and things like this. Those ideas came up again, and at the end, I think lots of Austrians decided not to follow this and not to give in and not to let themselves be pressured into something they do not want. Especially as we in Austria are very aware of the severe side effects the vaccines can have.
Well, I'm well aware of the Austrians. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Amazing culture,
thank you.
Amazing food, amazing landscape, of course. I've got family in Austria, and I do know the Austrian people to be very independent-spirited, which is the real charm of the country. Let's bring my panel in. I want to ask about your planned protest, but we do have with us, Alexander, Benedict Spence and Mike Parry and Nicky Hodgson, who are all British journalists. While I get to them, can I ask you, oh, here they come. Mike Parry, I know you're very pro-vaccine. I mean, I'm supportive of it. I'm double jabbed, but I don't think it should be mandated. What's your view?
Well, Alexander said that the Austrians are freedom-loving people, and I accept that. But they're also selfish and ignorant-loving people, because if they don't understand that the one great weapon that started against COVID-19, and it largely started here in the United Kingdom, was the power of vaccination. Australia, not Austria, Australia, one of the original countries who said, we don't need to vaccinate our people, we're an island, we'll just close all our borders. Australia had one of the biggest problems in the world, and they've still got it. I mean, if Alexander can't see the stupidity of not encouraging people to get vaccinated, the greatest weapon we've got against a pandemic that came out of nowhere and we had to attack very, very quickly, then I'm sorry, Austria are not a freedom-loving country. They're rather an ignorant country, and you have a border with Germany, the border is with Bavaria. If this spreads into Germany, then you've started a new pandemic throughout Central Europe, and that is a very selfish thing to have done.
Alexander?
Well, it's first of all, thank you for all the insults. The very easy answer.
They weren't insults; they're observations. I'm sorry, I'm not insulting you. They're observations.
That's what comes out of all the calculations. Look at the statistics. Look at all the countries which do have a way higher vaccination rate than we have. This really did not change anything. Quite the contrary. And if you compare, for example, Australia, because you just mentioned it, I'm very much opposed to lockdowns. I think lockdowns are one of the biggest threats for health. As we all know from standard health education in school, that the biggest push for your immune system is to go out, meet other people and be in nature. And obviously, if you're locked down for more than 600 days, that's not the case anymore. So that's, for me, not a big miracle.
But Alexander, I'm sorry, you're talking about herd immunity. Herd immunity doesn't work.
And the countries which have the same rules as us for the higher vaccination rate do not prove to have a better outcome. Yes, there is a climate difference. So the countries which are still in a warmer climate zone have a lower incidence. But if you look at all the other countries, as I gave the example, Ireland, for example, very high vaccination rate. Or let's look at this little piece of England at the end of Spain, Gibraltar, with 100% vaccination rate, but a huge incidence. It doesn't really change.
Alexander,
the vaccine is not a game changer.
Alexander, I believe you're involved in a protest. Are you able to tell me what you're planning and when?
Yes. So I organised the first anti-corona protest last January. It was called Demonstration for Freedom, and then we decided to join the bigger demonstrations, and since then try to go to every bigger demonstration. Tomorrow, I think the biggest demonstration ever will happen in Austria. I never heard from so many people that they want to come. So we have different groups inviting. We have, well, obviously the Freedom Party. I think you will know that as the biggest organizer of the demonstrations tomorrow. But we have lots of independent groups. We have truck drivers, train drivers, doctors, nurses, and so on. All of them invite their friends and their co-workers to this huge demonstration. What do we expect? We expect this huge amount of people, first of all, to strengthen each other, to help each other to see they are not alone. There are people who understand them, and they are heard, actually. Their voice is being heard. And second of all, obviously, we want the Austrian government to step down. I don't know if you followed the Austrian news in the last months, but I bet you did. And you saw that our former Chancellor, Sebastian Kurz, had to step down due to a so-called corruption crisis. We don't have the details yet.
Yeah.
And the new Chancellor, who was never elected by the people, rules Austria, Alexander Schallenberg. Obviously, we don't want this. We want to have a proper election representing the opinion and the voice of the people.
I know, the Austrian Gordon Brown. Can you imagine anything worse? Or Theresa May. Now, we've got to run. We've only got a few seconds. But do you think that these protests can have an impact? I mean, do you think that this mandate is going to happen in February? Because I just wonder how it's going to work logistically.
So it's against our constitution, so obviously it should not work. But I do not know yet how the mandate will be introduced. It can be that there won't be a mandate for everyone. But
well, Alexander, I'll have to interrupt you. The clock's against us. Good luck with your protest. This is GB News. Thank you.